What's up, guys? Coming at you on Wednesday. And tonight I've got Jeremy Kauffman. We were supposed to do a show on Sunday, but I had this like really crazy allergic reaction. I still got freaking weird shit going on with my throat, but I'm good. Glad to be back. And yeah, we're going to talk about all the things you probably think we're going to talk about tonight. Jeremy's awesome. I've known him for a couple of years. I was actually his events coordinator and helped him put some events together when he ran for Senate a couple of years ago. That's kind of how like me and him kind of originally met and started talking. And then obviously he's a free stater. He's from New Hampshire. He's he's an awesome dude. And I'm gonna bring him on the stage. And Jeremy, what's up, man? How you doing tonight?
Hey, it's good to be here with you.
Yeah, man. So I guess like tell everyone who you are, how everyone knows you. I mean.
Oh man, I don't want to do that. Do I have to? I don't even know why people know me at this point.
I know
I think half the people who know me probably don't even know about that. I spent 5 years. I mean, we're going to talk about that. I spent like 5 years fighting the federal government in court. But that's old news, Ben. News only lasts like a couple of days now, maybe a couple of weeks. So.
It's one election cycle. It used to be, and now it's just a couple of weeks, apparently. I completely forgot what happened even at Porkfest, to be honest with you.
I'm like a loudmouth libertarian on the internet, I guess. But then I also break facts, and people don't know what to do with it. So I think people probably just know me from Twitter more than anything else at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly like, I appreciate you always bring some like controversial conversations to the forefront, but you always like have like stats to back up what you're saying. It's not like you're just like spewing out bullshit most of the time. You're like actually know what you're talking about, and people really fucking hate stats. And I hate stats. I was an economics major, and like 90% of stats are, like whatever. But if you have a good source, you know what I mean?
Like, I don't let you're about to have a kid. Don't even let them learn what a number is until they're like a teenager. Okay. I'll keep them off of those things.
That's fair. I would describe you as like a million different things, man. Obviously, like you're like very well known in New Hampshire. LPNH has given you a little bit of extra attention for different reasons. You ran for Senate a few years ago. You founded Library, which is awesome. I actually am a huge fan of the blockchain stuff there, and how you use that with like social media and Odyssey, but then also obviously you're with the Free State Project for a while, and you're also like just on Twitter, you know what I mean? Like I think that this is where, like you said, most people know who you're from, and I'm actually gonna probably kickstart this conversation off with a very controversial tweet that you dropped right after Porkfest. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. I mean, okay. Not specifically. The long one.
I said,
you're controlling me right now. I think you're about to drop it up.
Oh no, no chance, dude. This is real stuff. This is the most controversial tweet you probably ever dropped. You said, I said on Twitter, I just want to give a shout out and thank everyone who helped the Emo Caucus. And I gave you a special shout out for helping us in the pitch black dark set up our tent when I got there at fucking 10 p.m. You were kind of like the acting foreman trying to help us figure out this like horrible Chinese instruction manual that nothing was numbered properly. And that was interesting. But then your response was gold. You said, "You run such a great hub. I might even listen to my first ever emo song." And obviously, like, I didn't forget, bro. I didn't forget that. I actually went out and I custom sought out a special song that I heard this a while back. But I think you're going to like it because it's very, I've seen your post about Donald Trump recently. I think you're gonna dig this, dude. I think you're gonna dig it a lot. So we're gonna.
Don't want to be American idiots, no. Don't want a nation under the new maniac. And can you hear the sound of hysteria? Wake up! the subliminal mind, America. Welcome to a new kind of tension all across the African nation, where everything is meant to be. Okay, television dreams of tomorrow. We are not the ones who are meant to follow. That's enough to argue. Well, maybe I'm the America.
He said faggot there.
And I'm the part of the MAGA agenda. Now everybody's doing the propaganda. As they belong to the age of paranoia. Bye.
So that was pretty stupid, but I was like, this isn't even really emo. This isn't emo in the slightest. It's more like pop punky, but he had the emo bangs in the beginning, and I was like, I'll bust it out, man. I don't know. What are you thinking about? Like, do you know any emo at all? Were you serious?
Oh, I do. A little bit. Yeah. I mean, so I think I can tell you that I listened to Jimmy World in Winamp in 1990. You know, it would have been like 1999 or 2000 or like around then. And then I don't know what I actually listened to that counts as emo. Is Bright Eyes emo? I listened to Bright Eyes.
Oh, dude, absolutely. Bright Eyes is emo as fuck. That's so crazy you mentioned Bright Eyes. I didn't think that's out of left field for me from you. I didn't expect Bright Eyes, but
I know a lot about a lot of things. I'm a dangerous guy. I could We've never done music, but we could probably do it. I'm not completely ignorant.
I love that. Yeah. And thanks for everyone who's already watching. I got some haze from Kevin from the internet. We both know him. Nuke, Eddie, JC's in the chat per usual. Love those guys. But cool, man. So I guess like I wanted to, we'll kind of start like talking about your stuff with the SEC. Cause like that you fought the government for like 5 years. At this point, you are a professional cage match fighter. You also like, had to put in an appeal, and honestly, like I know that like they kind of just basically said fuck off with that, right?
No, I didn't put in an appeal.
Oh, you didn't put in an appeal?
No, it was, okay. I mean, we were out of out of money and essentially out of business, and we did we did not put in an appeal. It's very expensive too.
But I guess talk about library and why the government thought you were like doing like unregistered securities or whatever. They're trying to claim you're selling securities.
Totally. One small thing before we move on, though, I got to say, and I don't even know if you know this one. Certainly, probably the audience doesn't. In like 2009 or something like this, Jason Osborne was running the party tent at PorkFest, handing out free beer. He was basically LP emo caucus at the time. He was doing karaoke. There's an old video of him doing karaoke that causes him political trouble to this day. And he was the party guy at PorkFest. And now, of course, he's the House Majority Leader. One of the most prominent and successful politicians here in New Hampshire. So that's how that's what they don't tell you about this PorkFest stuff is you have a party and then one day you're like in the Senate. And
maybe I'll be the next House Majority Leader. Maybe I'm being groomed by PorkFest. Exactly. And it's crazy. Yeah. Didn't his daughter win Soapboxes here?
I probably.
And she was singing karaoke too, bro. And she freaking rocked. She was amazing. She's like this little like goth girl. She was hanging out at the emo hub the entire weekend.
Yeah, so it's multi-generational. Yeah. I'm not trying to ignore it. So I don't know on the court case. I mean, I can tell the whole story from scratch, but it's like I feel like a lot of people here who would have so it's like I don't know what we could talk about. I mean, it was a civil case. So just to be clear, it wasn't like a criminal charge. It's a civil case. The real lessons here. So one is with these kinds of things, anytime you're doing something novel, we're going to go through this with AI. The laws are not clear. This idea that the laws exist and are clear, it's just not true. For a long time, for basically the last several decades, until this Supreme Court Chevron ruling, the regulators were granted extreme deference over the interpretations of the statutes. So you have these statutes, and like, and in a lot of cases, I mean, it's like it's not just like a little bit unclear. It's like you have, like a law about like toasters and a law about I don't know, like air conditioners, and it's like which one of these is going to apply to Bitcoin? Yeah, it doesn't it's in the case of this blockchain stuff, it's like it's laws from the 1920s, and you have when new things are invented, they frequently don't fit wholly into existing categories, and and so you have these laws that don't even make sense. And so I guess the biggest thing I learned is like, what's the right way to think about all this stuff? Like, I wouldn't have said, for example, that like when you're hiring a lawyer before, and I hired a lawyer, like we had very well-regarded quality lawyers advising us, from day one. And what you're essentially hiring these lawyers to do is like they're not telling you what the law is because they don't know that doesn't exist. Yeah. Right. They're judge simulators. Their job is to simulate correctly what the federal government will do. Right. And that's why
they might define it isn't how they're necessarily going to define something. I mean, I had to learn that too. Like even when I was fighting the ballot law commission, they had certain words that they were trying to kick me off the ballot, if you remember. And they were like defining things in a way that like didn't even really apply. And they kind of just like throw definitions out there. It's crazy. What you can define as a security is really what this came down to, right?
Right. And I'm very good at playing a game actually where I can explain why anything is a security now. Because it's a very broad test. And there are lots of things, even today, common things like, for example, collectible card games like Pokemon and Magic the Gathering and these kinds of things. Like these are almost certainly securities under the existing laws and under the existing precedents, but they just know they'd look like bad guys if they went after these companies. So, securities law has become one of these things that's like, it's almost everything is securities law. Like they're doing environmental regulation through the SEC now, right? That's how they do it. They force the companies to do environmental reporting and claim that it's a matter of securities law. And these aren't even new laws. Like it wasn't like a new law that was passed. Like the SEC just takes existing laws. It's like that existing law says you have to do climate disclosures now. And so it's crazy how much power they have.
That's insane. So, I mean, so the SEC, obviously they shut down your case and it was rolled in their favor. Now, has that whole situation like opened up any new doors for you? Like, are you taking like what you had there and turning it into something new? Or
I talk about it on podcasts. Yeah. So it's one of the
just tell the whole world what's your next diabolical.
No, I've completely moved on from all this stuff. I've completely moved on from Library and Odyssey, both, and so I'm not involved with that anymore. So
okay,
and I'm a mix of optimistic and pessimistic about blockchain generally. The fundamentals are still good. Hopefully stuff like we're seeing like something like Polymarket, now finally work for prediction markets. And so there's like good stuff. And then there's also bad stuff where it's like you go to PorcFest and the idea of peer-to-peer cash at least as of today does not work. Right.
I know.
It doesn't work. People don't want to. There are more people who use cryptocurrency has been on a downward trend at PorcFest for probably 5+ years to the point that now no one even uses it. Right.
We were getting a lot of goldbacks. Goldbacks seem to be like the thing, But awesome. Well, I mean, so obviously, you moved here from Philadelphia, right? So, and I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, so I have a huge soft spot in my life for PA. Do you miss the food down there, by the way? Because like PA has some very unique foods. I don't know.
Yeah, well, New Hampshire is like one of the few places you can live where we're almost not known for anything.
It's chicken tenders, bro. We got chicken tenders.
Are we known for that? Whereas even something like like Scranton, PA, gets a dish. Or Binghamton, New York has speedy sandwiches, or Troy, New York has tiny hot dogs. It's like, how do we not get anything? I mean, Philadelphia obviously has the cheesesteak, and cream cheese and, and other things that get associated with it. And we get We get nothing here in New Hampshire.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but like, we have all these innovative people moving here, including yourself, including me, who moved here with the Free State Project. And like, you'd think that maybe some of them would be culinary, at least a little bit. Maybe they can invent some kind of new cool foods that will pop off. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. Honestly, the food's probably fine. I don't actually eat out that much. And
I just wish there was better seafood.
Better seafood. There's not good seafood in Portsmouth, at least, or something like that.
Portsmouth has good seafood, but I mean that's as close as it gets. But yeah, you moved here like a while ago. It was like what, like 10 plus years ago, or around 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think actually probably coming up on. I think this will be my 9-year anniversary in a month. So, and
you moved here for the Free State Project, or did you move here? It was the Free State Project kind of something you found when you got here.
No, I moved here for the Free State Project. I wouldn't say like actively following, but I've been aware of the Free State Project essentially since its founding, because I've been a libertarian. I've considered myself a libertarian for essentially as soon as I learned the word. Right. So, but I didn't like take it that seriously, but it was like, I had the ties that I had to Philadelphia had weakened, and I was feeling that it was, time to start a family, and I didn't want to do that in Philadelphia. And so I spent more than a year. I visited New Hampshire multiple times before deciding that I was going to come here, because I'm the kind of guy who tends to jump in with 2 feet. Like once he does something, so I've got to be careful about what I'm going to jump into, because I'm not always very good at like doing things casually. So
sure. I mean, like, I feel like that's the case with most autist free taters that move here. We just kind of like dive at it. I mean, like, I moved here and then like I immediately got involved with LP&H and the campaign, and I was just, this is how we do it. Like, you moved to New Hampshire, people like try to just get involved right away, right? And you are no different story. Like, you eventually ended up as like the executive director for the Free State Project.
Well, not everyone's like that. I want to be like, we probably select for these types a little bit, but no, there is a huge number of these underwater free staters, and like they don't go to events. They don't. I mean, I can give you an example. I know someone here who moved from my college, who's lived here for 8 years, moved here for the Free State Project. I got him to come to like one event the first like 3 weeks that he had moved, and otherwise you don't see him. He has kids now, so he'll show up and we see like, so he sees other free staters now at like children's parties.
Right.
But otherwise he just has no desire to go out and be to be social, to be involved. And there are lots of examples like this. I mean, there's so many people who are who are sort of underwater. And so while there are a ton of people who are above water, there's a multiple of that, I think, who are kind of a lot of
like more passive voters, basically. And even then, like some of the passive voters kind of became distraught, even with the Free State Project, even more recently, over drama or vision, whatever, so things happen. And I don't know, like, I think that like, I feel like Free State Project does a great job of, like back in the day, like when I first found out Free State Project, I feel like I was just like, I saw a bunch of stuff online about it. Obviously this is how a lot of people see it, is like Twitter, other places, learning about Pork Fest. I always had loved New Hampshire growing up. I was from Pennsylvania, and I thought New Hampshire would be a cool place to live someday. I didn't know about Free State Project when I was growing up because it didn't exist. But I do think that we're doing some cool things here. Obviously, we have like the most decentralized government in the country, which is why a lot of free staters and libertarian leaning agorists and anarchists and libertarians are successful here if they run for office and do all these things. But there's also like a shit ton of things, people are out booking events all the time, like every day of the week, there's different shit going on. But something that you're very passionate about is freedom breeding. You've pumped out quite a few fuck trophies lately, and I am about to release one into the world as well. So, there's a lot of like family oriented stuff that's been starting with all, like, it's almost like a free stater baby boomer. I feel like I know like 8 people that are pregnant right now. It's insane.
Yeah, it's the number one reason to be here, as you're now experiencing. I think it's awesome. I've issued you congratulations privately, but I'll now do so publicly because it is awesome. It's I think it's an entirely good thing. I think a lot of people, I'm not saying it's easy or whatever, but like, just remember, what I always like to tell new dads is like, people way stupider and worse than you already have a bunch of kids, and like they get by and like their kids like don't die, like a lot. People won't think you're a good guy if you're like you try to make it sound. I'm not gonna say it's easy because people won't think you're like, but you gotta people make it harder than it needs to be,
right.
And
a lot of helicopter parenting that goes on. I think like free staters are like, for the most part, like they're not helicopter parents, they want their kids to like be individuals. They'll watch their kids and protect them, but like they're also like, like let them be free a little bit, right? I do have like somebody told me specifically to ask you a question. Now here's the thing. You're Jewish. Jewish people have a lot of different funds, right? So I just wanted to know, how much should I be setting aside for my berry fund?
Is this the berry budget for children? Is this the?
I have no idea about this. I have no idea what it's about.
Oh, so this is basically that they don't tell you how much you like. People factor in a lot of costs, your education, but like people don't talk about berries, man. Like your kids can eat $100 worth of berries a week, no problem. If you give them unfettered berry access, you get a couple of young kids. Yeah, man. $5,000 a year on berries. That's the kind of money that people don't talk about,
So should I be like investing in the berry?
Yeah, you got to get a berry fund going. You got to get a berry savings fund. Like the college fund. Do kids really need college?
I mean,
questionable.
Berries.
Do they need berries? They probably do. Okay, so let's talk about which one of these is more important.
so ridiculous. You can probably guess who told me to. It's my neighbors upstairs told me to ask you that. Yeah, man. So
ask Jeremy about that thing he tweeted 6 months ago. It's like
right. Yeah. Well. We have Renita's in the comments saying berries are better than college. I think that most people will probably agree with that. I do want to say, so when did you start getting involved with LP&H? Did you kind of jump into the Libertarian Party right away? Or was that something you kind of like slowly moseyed into because of the state of the party when you moved here?
Oh, I want to take this moment to give full credit to Daryl Perry for recruiting me to LP&H. I wouldn't be a member without him. And I'm a member for a very simple reason. And this actually shows for LP affiliates. Oh, how do you get members? It's very simple. Here's how Daryl got me a member. He shouted at me from across the room. He said, "Hey, Jeremy, will you join the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire?" And that was it. That's why I joined.
That's so wild. And what room was this? what kind of was this a free stater event?
That was at Liberty. That was at Liberty Forum in like 2010s, late 2010s. I don't know what year specifically. I don't know if I joined right after I moved or I'd been here for a couple of years, but I've been a member. I didn't do anything. I didn't even attend convention, but I'm always of the attitude. This has been my attitude since I came here. Is like I basically just say yes to things. So it's like, oh, sure. 20, join the Quill, whatever, pay that. Like I'm my default is supportive, and if something is bad, then I'll withdraw. But like I start by just saying yes, and so I didn't really participate, but I just like you can have here's dues or whatever, and I did continue to pay for multiple years. What got me to join actually was I couldn't get the LP&H people to be pro Free State enough. So it's funny how everything ended up, because like I would like all of our groups to be working together. Sure. That's ultimately the goal. And so LP&H had been was actually fairly hostile to the Free State project in that era, because I was like, there's all these libertarians around the country. They're like, we want to run for office. It's like, let's just get more people to come to New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And so they didn't seem to care very much about the Free State movement. And so that was why I got involved with the Mises Caucus people, was to come in and help make LPNH, like, it was a bunch of Free Staters. Like, we were in favor of the Mises Caucus side of things at the time, but it was like as much or more about getting LPNH, to be Free State friendly.
Yeah. And I'll like, so it's kind of funny that Daryl brought you into the party. Daryl's actually like, he's actually used to be like a pretty cool guy. And then that witchy lady just decided to like go off the deep end. And
yeah, spells work, it turns out.
Spells do work. I mean, she had dude, she actually had the room next to me at the Reno convention back in 2022. And I don't know if I've told you this story or not, but they were in the room right next to me. I was sharing it with another New Hampshire, I can't remember who it was. But dude, like, she messaged me at like 3:00 in the morning saying they were watching like lesbian porn on a certain channel and something about snuffling underbrush, because that was Jackie Perry's thing. I don't know if you remember that, but
yeah, I know.
It's pretty foul. I was like, you disgusting lady, why are you messaging me here?
I try to block it out. Yeah.
But anyways, so that's interesting that's what brought you in. Obviously, like, the kind of like the state of like the Free State Project and the Libertarian Party has changed pretty much. Like, would you say both of them have changed like almost 180 degrees since you started? Like, it's definitely different over the last 3-4 years.
LPNH has changed a lot. The Free State Project has changed a little bit. It's mostly back to what it was in the early 2010s when Carlo was running it, because Carlo was running it then. And so that's just what it will, well, Eric's running it. So I think it will be different under Eric as he starts to put more of his own, stamp on the organization.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, for a long time, I mean, the Free State Project, the Free State Project as an organization fighting with its most prominent members is sort of the entire history of the organization. I mean, we don't need to rehash all the bad stuff, but like, it's all the most they've disavowed some of the most prominent elected people. They, of course, famously disavowed Ian Freeman, who's a hero, and so them shooting themselves in the foot is not new. But
I think libertarians in general shooting themselves in the foot is not new.
It's a testament to the strength of the movement, right? I mean, like, the idea is so good and it's clearly working. It's like there's something in startups you'll see where it's like, if your product is like, if good enough, like, or needed enough. It's the opposite. Not if your product is good enough. If your product is needed enough, it can actually be quite poor. Like the more the solutions are underexplored, the worse the solution can be to get, sort of traction in the market. And I'm not trying to say that like the Free State Project is some particularly terrible solution, but like, it's the only thing on the market. Like, there's not, there's nothing else. There's nothing else that's even sort of loosely offering this.
Yes. Right.
So
I think that, like, one thing that I will say that I like about LPNH and why I'm involved is because it's like an affiliate that's, for the most part, it's like autonomous. Like, we have our own thing going here that's not like any other part of the country. And there's certain other states that are trying to do something similar. But, really, like, one of the first states to kind of break away from like the mold, if you will, was, I think, LPNH. They kind of like started saying like, no, we're going to kind of do our own thing. And it might have started off with the little Mises Caucus break that happened a few years ago. But I don't know. I think it was kind of always like intertwined into this because of the Free State Project and because, we were trying to be and encourage people to come to the Free State. So we wanted to be different. We wanted to show everybody something different. And, like, even the Twitter page, our banner says, LPNH New Hampshire first or America second. Right. So, I think that mentality kind of has hit home for a lot of people here, but a lot of people get pissed off about that, across the country with the Libertarian Party nationally. But did you feel any of that when you were in DC? Because I feel like when we're in DC, everyone kind of just gets along. And I mean,
Well, what's interesting is there's no the people who disagree with each other like almost don't interact, or if they do interact, I do agree that it's cordial, but a lot of it just seems like they just don't interact. You know, like so there's obviously a lot of people who like LPNH and like us. You know, there's a reason we're the most followed affiliate, and it's partially because a lot of people like what we have to say and the way that we're doing things. And so certainly I met a ton of people who I think are supportive of what we're doing. I'm sure there are people there who think we're terrible people. And yes, they probably would be nice to my face. But I almost wish that the opposite, like I if we're going to have conflicts, like I'd rather get through them. It's like, there's almost no one, if this person can be self-rational, that I can't say, okay, here's why we disagree. Like we should be able to show you, like, all right, we're going to disagree. We're going to have some impasse. But like with any rational person who has sort of control over themselves and their emotion and their faculties, I can get to, okay, this is our fundamental, place of disagreement. And I've tried doing this with some of the sort of libertarians. Like I'm in one of the delegate chats with some of the people who don't like me. And I would try asking just even like respectful questions. They're entirely polite about, well, we seem to have these differences. What's the root of them? Where are they coming from? And it's just, you're not a real libertarian and I am. And that's all they can. There's not, it's not
a litmus test.
Yeah. Well, but it's not, there's very little ability I've found with a lot of these people to sort of be reflective of themselves, of their own nature. And that's what makes this fight so hard. Like even stuff like, like Chase won't sit down and have a dialogue. Mike Termont, to his credit, actually did. He sat down with LPNH and we were able, because then at least you can see, okay, you're coming at it from this perspective, we're coming at it from this perspective. Like the fact that, Mike Termont has tried to accomplish a different brand image than we are, then it makes sense that there's going to be a conflict. But if you can be a reasonable person, we can at least sit down and be like, okay, it makes sense that we're going to have this disagreement, and we're going to have, and like, okay, so in this area, we're not going to get along.
And Mike's actually coming on my show on the 24th. Yeah. We're going to talk about only the controversial shit, the qualified immunity stuff. Like his team asked me like to come and kind of hash this out because he wants to get that stuff kind of cleared up, I guess. But, I'm not going to be like, I'm nice, but, at the same time, there's some stuff that people are upset about and I'm upset about. Rightfully so, and I think that he should answer for those things. And I'm sure he did a little bit at PorkFest at the hub during those questions. I wasn't actually able to attend it, but, and I know that, he was over there for a few hours answering questions. So.
Well, I think it's commendable. I mean, to me, it's a sign of the character that I would want. I think character is very important. Even if Termont has, I don't need someone to be perfect, and we've got a thin bench. But to me, that the idea that someone will, go and have the conversation, that's something that I always want to see, and so I always want to be encouraging and rewarding that kind of behavior because, I'll talk to anyone. Like people, I think people like to write LPNH and myself off as trolls or edgelords because they don't want to have the serious conversation. Right. And that's why the only thing they can do is taboo it. Like in terms of, someone like Chase who avoids the conversation, I think there are certain arguments and things that can be pointed out that he does not want to have to acknowledge. And so the only strategy he takes is to never engage, whereas, I kind of wish that like their campaign had a little more separation like Joe and Spike's did. Like they didn't really agree, but like Spike kind of just took the reins and was like, he basically like acted as if it was his campaign. And he was a really good messenger during that whole time. I kind of wish like Mike would split off and be like, like he might have that opinion, but this is my opinion. This is the, because I don't think that Mike agrees with Chase on a lot of his stances, but every time he gets asked about it, he just says, oh, this is what my team stance is. I just think that's such a cop out. So, well, it's
like,
a different,
no pun intended. So,
I mean, it's a different strategy, and I can respect that strategy from Mike. Also, it's interesting. Like good politicians are can be shapeshifters at times. You can look at some of the things that were coming out in 2020 by one of our our most beloved libertarian messengers today, and I agree that he's a very talented messenger. So you don't even need to say who this, but he escaped being shamed from some things that I think he maybe his running mate got it a lot worse. And it's kind of funny because it's not clear that the differences were that substantive, but it shows that you can. Also shows that you can pivot because, like, obviously. Messaging, it's Spike Cohen. I'm talking about Spike Cohen.
Yes, I know. Yeah. No,
so I can't keep being. Yeah, I figured, but I'm just saying.
Clearly. I gotta ask, so we talk about the presidential election, and obviously, like, this isn't somebody that we wanted to. This isn't a ticket that we voted for. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't what we were hoping for here. But it's also a ticket that's causing a lot of division in the party. And I kind of wanted to like gauge what your thoughts were of like the current health of the party, which I think was already pretty bad before the convention, and what you think like the Libertarian Party looks like going forward, even up to the election and then maybe past it.
So there's one very good thing and sort of one very bad thing, I guess. The very good thing is I think that the sort of demonstration of libertarians as a panderable bloc, I think, is a very good strategy. I think it played a role in getting Assange freed already, and it played a role in the commitment to free Ross from Trump. I'm not saying that the Libertarian Party literally produced those things, but I think it contributed to those outcomes. And we see it with the Free State movement in New Hampshire as well, that by being a clear block of people that show up and are present, you can have an outsized impact in what you can get. And so I think that is like something the Libertarian Party hasn't, tried to do before. And so to be like, look, we're 1 million libertarians. We all care enough to pay $25 a year, and you better give us something. Hey, we've been getting very little for a long time, so that's a very neat thing. Something is better than nothing. I do believe that. So, and then on the other side, I think the internal party division is pretty terrible. And what's worse about it is that it seems like that there's very little ability to sort of bridge this gap. And honestly, you see it in New Hampshire as well. And so, I mean, part of what, as someone who does try to just like follow evidence, it does seem that there are people who are whatever you want to call it. Like I do kind of call it left, right. And I consider myself squarely on the right, pretty far right,
which is like crazy because like I've seen you say a lot of times, you kind of like right, but you're progressive too. So
well, that I am, in
the right sense of the word, though.
And so and so what can you do? Because it seems how like this is whatever this is. I don't know. I don't want to force left right people to call it something else, but like there's these issues seem to overlap, right? It's not like it's random. It's not like half the people disagree. Like the disagreement on, well, funny in my case, a couple of them are idiosyncratic, but like if you look at, there's an alignment on like these culture war issues, as well as border and immigration issues, as well as the way that you sort of, even just the way you talk about problems. Do you talk about it in terms of the disadvantaged, or do you talk about it in terms of sort of the other side of it, the way that,
and that's what it comes down to. That's what this whole division in the party is. It's like the milquetoast pandering side, or are you going to be truthful? Are you going to tell people exactly how it is?
I don't think it's entirely the milquetoast pan. I mean, I think there is an aspect of that, and that certainly applied during COVID. But like there's another side who would say that we're being, when we talk about, when we defend sex work in this bold way, we're being the brave messengers, right. And whereas the same group that would think they're being the brave messengers and that you're being cringe, like it's just the same thing, just flipped again. And so what this really, I think, gets at is, who do you see as adjacent to the Libertarian Party that you're trying to recruit from? And for a lot of these sort of the people who want the party to be, quote, professional and whatever are like, they're trying to recruit from sort of left-aligned neoliberal types who, have some appreciation for markets and the benefits of markets, and they're trying to get them to become full libertarians. That's what they want to do. And then on the other side, you've got these people who want to pull from, sort of the far right. And I say, I don't use far right as a pejorative. To me, a lot of the far right are very reasonable and good people, but they're just on the far right side of things. And so that
sound like Trump on J6. There's a lot of fine, good people.
Well, it's so crazy. It is. It's weird to lose that. The idea. That far right is being, somehow it's the worst thing you can be, right? It's even worse than being far left. And I obviously don't think this is true at all.
Right.
But there is this sort of, vibe to it. Yeah.
And it's like, left, right. We're talking, more culturally, like really traditionally, like left, right was meant to be more of an economic scale. But it's turned into like left versus right in terms of like the culture war shit, which is like, the difference between people having enough free speech to say shit you don't like in the streets or cutting off kids' genitals. And I think that there's like a huge distinction there. Like one of those is better than the other.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously this is the difference, but I tried to look for what are the root sort of psychological aspects that are causing, that causes some of this stuff. And in the case of that one, I'm not saying what I'm about to say describes that one specifically, but like, I know that one of the differences is definitely sort of our moral orientation in terms of how local versus universal we are. Like a lot of the differences that exist, the people that are quote on the left tend to be more universalist in their morals. And I was even talking to Karen and Harless, and this was a great conversation where we're able to sort of find like, we agree on the role of the state, but we still nonetheless have this difference, which is, how much do you value some random person in China versus say some random person, in your zip code or whatever, and how, if you ever have to trade off between those things. And I put a very strong bias, towards the people near me, my family and friends first, and then, my acquaintances and my, town and so on. These are versus someone very far away from me. I'm not going to go out of my way to harm them. I agree that I would have like a moral obligation not to hurt them, but I just think they don't register very much to me, And but there are other people who are very universalist. They want to help. They want it to them that the African life is as important as as something someone else's or someone their neighbors or whatever. And so this is a difference. This is a real difference in terms of our moral orientation. And it's not related to the role of the state. But if we have these moral differences, then we're going to be alienated by each other when we encounter the difference. And so I suspect around sort of the children and the child transitioning and that kind of stuff, that there is this that there is something there that's getting at that there's this difference in our personalities, and it's not just this surface level thing.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man. Like, I think that like, it's crazy. Cause I mean, I just like, less than a year ago, I lived in a small town, Pittsfield, which is not crazy far from where I'm at now, which is Manchester. But like, this was like a very small town community. The culture in that town was much different, like has a whole different feel. And I can tell why people who are raised in Pittsfield, obviously, are going to have a different upbringing that are people that are raised in Manchester. Like in Manchester, like they're finally starting to kick homeless people off the streets, but there's homeless people everywhere. It's definitely more diverse here. There's different cultures that are like intertwining, and there's like obviously a bunch of this is like kind of a half and half liberal, half not city. I mean, isn't our mayor Republican? I don't know. I didn't. They just like put in a new mayor that's Republican or something. But at the end of the day, like I think that like some of these culture issues come down to obviously and you can't control how your kids are going to end up, but your parental upbringing does play a role in how you interpret some of this stuff. And I think that like being in the Free State Project and surrounding yourself with people who appreciate freedom and individual liberty and stuff, I think that that's a good thing for people that are, in families or want to start a family, to come here and be a part of that. It's not an escape from the shitty culture, that the culture war that's pretty much lost. I mean, we're not going to like flip the culture war on its head and win the culture or something like that. But there's definitely some liberty victories that are happening here. And I think that like being in the community here that we have would be really good for people. It'd be a good change, a healthy change for a lot of people that are looking to escape that, the culture differences and stuff, you know? So I don't know.
Yeah, look, I don't want to say that we're like trans people exactly, but there's sort of interesting sort of parallel where, you know, what the internet has allowed, you know, is these people with these extreme minority beliefs. There's the like the analogy of the toaster fuckers, right? That the people and prior to the internet, the one guy who fucks his toaster is just completely ostracized, you know, from his town. But now they can all go on the internet and find each other and reinforce each other and talk about how brave it is, you know. And so this obviously applies to both trans people, and of course it applies to the libertarians, right? So now we can, you know, we can find young ones on the internet and you know, and ensure they stay in the club. You know, I'm not like, I'm both half joking and I'm being like kind of serious about this. Like it's both good, and it's part of what's good and bad about modernity, because it's allowing people to sort of meet each other and sort of spiral off mimetically in all kinds of different directions. You know, me as someone who's like very pro libertarianism and Darwinism and competition and all of these things, I think it's beautiful, even if a bunch of them end up deranged and crazy. Which is why even I'm actually somewhat accepting of trans stuff, so long as it's not, you know, here and around me, because this, you know, just so I don't like it personally, but like I'm much more okay with it, you know, depending on the, you know, where and how it's happening. And so, but this is part of, you know, this is just a big part of what's going on, and this is what we're doing. And then that 1% or that 2%, they go and they get really loud. And it turns out that for most people, you know, sort of just side with the loud people, especially if it's some new thing. Like, and it's not something quite as viscerally repulsive as actually having sex with your toaster, you know, like, so it's like and all of a sudden these people come in and they're loud and they're agreeing with one another. And a bunch of people are just like, well, I guess they're right. Like, I never thought about it before. So like this, I mean, honestly, this is how, for not to defend the trans stuff, but like, this is how it happened for like a lot of people who were decent people, I think, got caught up believing in stuff that wasn't true, but that in the same thing that happened with COVID, where it's like, you know, like, I don't know where you want to assign blame here. It gets complicated because you had people who were directly enabling it, you had people going along with it, you had people believing other people, and then reinforcing and spreading these things, you know. And so you had these sort of lies about this stuff, people claiming it was healthcare and so on. And, you know, I can, like COVID, say that I successfully never fell for this one, but I can also kind of have some sympathy for people, you know, who did.
I mean, and like you said, like I'm like pretty accepting, you know, too, you know, I feel like I'm pretty, you know, in that realm, but also at the same time, I will pay the $99 bill if they want to go rent the U-Haul down the street for the one way to Boston. Do you know what I'm saying? So it is what it is. But I think that, like, you know, what we're doing here, it's cultivating like a different type of community. And that's something I appreciated since I've gotten here. Like, I can't really walk 2 blocks without coming across or being within, you know, a certain vicinity of another libertarian here.
You know, I almost like calling it a culture more than a community, though, which is an idea I've never had before this conversation, because I've kind of certainly there are communities.
It's like a counterculture, right? It's kind of like,
but a community isn't tens of thousands of people isn't a community. It's nice to call it one. I'm not trying to like shut down people who are saying this word, but just like being realistic, you know, it's not like that's a scale you can't keep track. Like, we're at a scale where you can't know everyone, you can't keep track of everyone, you can't, you know, and at that point, what you need to keep people working together is a culture, right? You need a culture keeps disparate people who don't even know one another. And we obviously, I think, have a lot. I'm not trying to act like, we don't have one. I think we do have one, but I think that's a huge part of what we're doing. And it turns out you can just do that. You can't change the culture for everyone, but you can change your own. You can pick a different cultural palette for yourself and your family. And that's here. Like, whether you go to PorcFest or whether you go to your various meetups or various homeschooling groups or various, like, that is a culture,
Absolutely. And I mean, speaking of PorcFest, the PorcFest was fucking awesome. It's definitely a unique culture. Obviously we had a good time. You helped me again with another Dairy Queen story hour, which was fucking awesome. You got to put on a wig and read some libertarian Dr. Seuss, which was fucking great. But like, what were some of your favorite parts of PorcFest this year?
It's definitely meeting all the parents. So I ran a hub for parents. Well, myself and a bunch of the other parents who you've got to meet now that you're going to be a parent. So but it's mostly the parents that I just hang out with regularly, and so we have a huge you could call it like a camp. It's like seven. It's a hub, I guess. It says it's a set, but we have 7 sites. We don't put the hub on all of them. We sleep on a bunch of them, but we have like a big common area. It's the right way to do PorcFest. More people, I think, should do this. You get your group of 15 people together, and you can build like a really nice, commons, and really we can keep escalating PorcFest. Just being able, I don't know how many new people I meet at a given PorcFest. I'm sure it's well over 100, and so to me, that's like my favorite part. I won't remember every single person, but just like meeting those people, having those conversations, and people, just seeing people experiencing it, for the first time, and this kind of thing, because it is. I mean, you had maybe more libertarian friends in California, although feel free to correct me. I didn't have very many libertarian friends in Philadelphia. I wasn't involved with my libertarian party or anything like this. And there were a couple of people I could kind of tell, but like for the most part, I just did it on the internet and didn't. It might be hard to believe, but I actually just kept my mouth shut a lot about it.
Yeah, I've actually heard stories, man. I heard you're kind of a card shark on the DM. Like, you're insanely good at Magic the Gathering.
That is actually true. Yeah, that is true.
Dude, that is wild. I never expected to hear that, but I've heard.
I've got all kinds of secrets. I ran a radio station for a couple of years, Ben. That's how I know so much about music. So there's a lot of secret history.
You do have a face for radio.
My mom tells me that all the time. So it's
nice.
It's nice to hear.
I love it, man. Well, we're kind of on the last couple minutes here, but I guess tell everyone where they can find you, give a pitch for anything you want to give it to, and I'll wrap up with just one final question for you.
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at my full name, Jeremy Kauffman. I post pretty actively. And that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's the only place you really need to. I'm probably technically on other places, but they're not. I don't really use them. So just.
I guess my final question would be, what do you think going forward, as libertarians, what should we be focused on, in terms of community building or culture building?
In New Hampshire or like nationwide?
In general, because honestly, right now it's like. Obviously, we're doing our thing in New Hampshire, which I think is, we have a way of doing it, but nationally they're struggling.
So there's the easy answer, which is just to go all in on New Hampshire. So Dennis Pratt, who will listen to this and send me his review of whether I talked about New Hampshire enough, that's obviously the answer. But I will say, now that I gave that obvious answer, I'm very interested in whether and how libertarians can find better ways of governing themselves. Like, the Libertarian Party is probably legally, it kind of has to be a democracy, which I think libertarians would generally agree is the best way of running things. But we also I don't know, there must be something. I want better ways of coordinating ourselves, better ways of getting ourselves to work together. Because if the idea is that our ideas will produce, better outcomes, that you'd want to live, that people would want to live in a libertarian, like if there was some libertarian society, some libertarian order that people would prefer it to other choices, then however that thing functions, it should work for us. It should work for ourselves. And so how can we do better solving that problem for ourselves is something I've been thinking a lot about, and something I encourage other libertarians to be thinking about.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much. We kind of talked a little bit about everything, and definitely had some thought-provoking questions there. And I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for your time. I'll throw you backstage real quick. I'll wrap up the show, and we'll talk again in just a second. All right. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching the show. Very thankful for you guys. We will be back again on Sunday night. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Try to stay cool. I'm sweating my ass off in here. But yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thanks. Bye.